presenter that he could tell audience members were racist just by looking at them. Thankfully, trigonometry host and friend of the show Konstantin Kisin wasn't having any of it and called out his bizarre bias. Watch.
From a personal experience, as I said, I went to see him a couple of years ago in Konstantin. One thing that I found actually quite troubling that night was I sensed that quite a lot of people in the audience were there so they could laugh at a bit of racism because they don't get the chance all that often. Does that trouble you?
If I were a mind reader like you, it would trouble me. I have no idea why the people were enjoying his show. I have more faith in human beings than perhaps you do. I believe that people are able to understand irony and very clever comedy that Jerry Sadowitz does.
Well, as you correctly point out, I was there, you weren't. I was watching what was going on around me and trying to assess who thought what about it. But listen, it was fascinating to hear.
And how did you assess that? Sorry.
Well, just by judging, by watching people watching their body language and listening to them around the venue.
You can tell what someone thinks.
No,
I'm not.
I'm not saying I knew what they were thinking. I'm just saying it struck me that might have been the case.
No, you did say you knew what they were thinking.
No,
you said exactly that. You said that you knew that
I said I was concerned they might have been. But listen, we are out of time.
Konstantin Kisin, you absolutely owned him in that moment. I mean, he couldn't wrap up the interview quick enough. But this is an example of the way the BBC think, isn't it? I thought it was actually quite indicative. It was quite a revealing moment, Konstantin, live on air.
Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you run out of time once your argument gets destroyed, isn't it? But yeah, I know what you mean, Dan. I think there is, when we're talking about, as we did in this case about comedy, there's always this assumption that sort of people in the BBC sitting and they can go and see a show by a comedian like Jerry Sadowitz and they get the irony, but the sort of plebs around them are suspect, and they can see that's why they're there. And I think it comes from a sort of snooty attitude among some people. They look down their noses at people because they have a different accent, or they come from a different part of the country, or they didn't go to Oxbridge, or whatever it might be. And I think that's a problem, particularly for a broadcaster that those very people pay for.
No, indeed it is. And Konstantin, what did you make of this revelation that the Line of Duty cast have actually been contributing to these led by donkey videos in their Line of Duty persona? That feels a bit biased too.
Yeah, I didn't follow this story specifically, but I do think it's really important for a public broadcaster like the BBC to stay well away from this sort of thing. And I'm afraid they haven't been doing that for the last 6 years and probably longer. I do think it's so important for the BBC to be perceived as being neutral. And, they have gone some way towards undermining that, which is unfortunate in my view.
Well, it is especially seeing that we know the BBC comes from an anti-Brexit position anyway. Look, Konstantin, I wanted to get your thoughts on a new BBC impartiality row actually breaking tonight. So I'll talk you through it. It starts with the corporation's wokey-in-chief, Gary Lineker, tweeting, "As a politician, how could you ever, under any circumstances, bring yourself to vote for pumping sewage into our seas? Unfathomable." Now, this tweet actually saw him go to war with the BBC journalist and one of the few people at the corporation who actually understands the remit of the BBC. I actually like this guy, Home and Foreign Affairs editor Neil Henderson. He asked, "Do you have the freedom to tweet about this sort of thing because you have different contract to mind?" To which Lineker replied, "Of course," before claiming that duty of impartiality applies, quote, "only in news and current affairs." So this is fascinating, isn't it, Konstantin? Because it feels like there's actually a divide at the BBC. You've got the folk like Lineker who don't give a damn about maintaining the impartiality, and then a small group of journalists who are increasingly outnumbered.
Yeah, look, I think I probably agree in this instance. I think it's really important that the news side of things is impartial. Gary Lineker isn't an expert in politics, as you can tell if you follow his Twitter. But I do think he should be able to speak his mind, and he is entitled to make those comments, in my opinion. But of course, in an environment in which people are already concerned about the impartiality and neutrality of the BBC, this will be a bad look. Although, as I say, I do think actually he should be able to speak his mind if that's the contractual situation that he's got.
And you think that's because he's not a news broadcaster?
Well, that's my understanding from what's been said there, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have a bit of an issue with it because I feel like he is one of their star broadcasters and he has been on a campaign to bring down the government. Personally, I would say if you want to express your views or do what you do in your podcast, brilliant podcast, Konstantin, or I do what I do here, just don't expect to take public money for it.